Reagan Walker had always considered himself an average guy. Not spectacular, not forgettable, just somewhere in between. He had a stable marketing job, a decent apartment in Brooklyn, and a life so predictable it could be timed to the second. Wake up at 6:30 a.m. Coffee at 7 o'clock. Work by 9 o'clock. Nothing ever happened that deviated from his routine. Until today. The morning had started like any other. The comforting hum of the coffee machine filled the silence of his apartment as he scrolled through his emails, half listening to the faint sound of the city beyond his window. He yawned, stretching one arm over his head, when his phone buzzed against the wooden table. An unknown number. He hesitated. Spam call? Telemarketer? He almost let it ring out, but something in his gut told him to answer.
Hello?
A deep, clipped voice responded.
Mr. Walker?
Reagan frowned. The tone was too formal, too precise.
Yes? Who's this?
This is Detective Harper with the NYPD. We need you to come down to the station immediately.
A strange chill ran down Reagan's spine. He let out a small, nervous chuckle.
What? Why?
A pause. Just long enough to make his stomach twist.
It's about a murder. And you're a person of interest.
The words landed like a hammer to his chest. His grip on the phone tightened, knuckles turning white.
A murder?
He nearly laughed again, but this time it was hollow dry.
That has to be a mistake. I don't know anything about a murder.
Then you'll have no problem coming in to clear things up.
Harper said smoothly. Reagan stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. His heart pounded, each beat like a drum inside his head. Murder? Police station? Person of interest? His mind scrambled for an explanation. Maybe a case of mistaken identity. Maybe someone had stolen his name. This kind of thing happened in movies, not real life. Not his life. His pulse roared in his ears as he looked around his apartment like he expected to find an answer hidden in the walls. The coffee machine beeped, signaling it was done, a cruel reminder of the normalcy he was about to leave behind.
Mr. Walker?
Harper's voice brought him back. Reagan swallowed hard.
Why, yeah. I'll come in.
Good.
The call ended. For a moment, he stood frozen, phone still pressed against his ear. Then, as if in slow motion, his fingers lost their grip on the coffee cup in his other hand. It slipped, crashing onto the floor, shattering into a dozen jagged pieces. The dark liquid spread across the tiles like spilled ink, seeping into the cracks. The world suddenly felt off-kilter. Unreal. Dragging a shaky hand through his hair, he grabbed his coat and keys, forcing his legs to move. His breaths were shallow, uneven. He needed to prove this was a mistake. Clear his name. Walk into the station and walk right back out. But as he stepped out of his apartment and into the cold morning air, a single thought consumed him.
Why me?
The interrogation room was colder than Reagan expected. The kind of cold that sank into his bones, numbing him from the inside out. The fluorescent light overhead flickered slightly, casting harsh shadows against the steel table where he sat, his hands clenched together so tightly his knuckles turned white. Across from him, Detective Harper leaned back in his chair, expression unreadable. His dark suit was crisp, his demeanor cool, calculated. He had the kind of eyes that saw straight through a person, peeling back the layers of their lies, even if there weren't any. Reagan's throat was dry, his pulse a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He hadn't been cuffed, but the weight of the room itself felt like shackles.
I don't understand why I'm here.
Reagan said, his voice uneven, too small for the space. Harper let out a breath, slow and deliberate, before flipping open a thin file. He pulled out a single photograph and placed it on the table. Reagan's stomach turned to ice. The man in the picture had dead eyes. His mouth was slightly open, the skin around it frozen in a silent scream. Blood pooled beneath his head, dark and thick. Reagan looked away so fast his vision blurred.
Who is that?
Jeremy Holt.
Harper's voice was level, steady.
He was murdered 2 nights ago in his apartment. Stabbed twice in the chest.
The name tickled something at the back of Reagan's mind, a faint, distant familiarity. He looked back at the photograph, this time forcing himself to really see the man's face. And then it clicked.
Oh my God.
Reagan whispered.
I knew him. But not well. We had a class together in college, years ago. That's it.
Harper nodded, unmoved.
And when was the last time you saw him?
Reagan shook his head, desperate.
I don't know. Maybe 5 years ago. I swear, I haven't spoken to him since. I didn't even know he lived in the city.
Harper didn't respond immediately. Instead, he reached into the file again and pulled out another photograph. This time it wasn't of the body. It was a close-up of a coffee mug sitting on a kitchen counter. With a jolt, Reagan recognized it instantly.
That mug was found at the crime scene.
Harper said, watching him closely.
Your fingerprints were on it.
Reagan's heart nearly stopped. His breath hitched, panic crawling up his spine like ice-cold fingers.
That's impossible.
Harper ignored him, flipping to another page in the file.
And we have an eyewitness. A neighbor who claims he saw someone matching your description enter Jeremy Holt's apartment the night of the murder.
No.
Reagan whispered, shaking his head violently.
No. This is crazy. I wasn't there. I swear to God, I wasn't there.
Harper tilted his head, studying him.
Then explain how your fingerprints got there.
Reagan's head spun. The walls of the room felt like they were closing in, pressing against his lungs, making it hard to breathe. His fingerprints? On a crime scene?
How?
He hadn't seen Jeremy in years. Had never been to his apartment. His mind raced, trying to find a way to prove this was some horrific mistake. But every piece of evidence Harper had was tightening a noose around his neck.
I don't know how.
Reagan rasped.
Someone must have planted it. I swear, detective, I didn't do this.
Harper didn't blink.
You better start remembering things real fast, Mr. Walker. Because right now, all the evidence points to you.
Reagan's whole body trembled. The weight of the words crushed him.
He was trapped.
The days in holding blurred together. Time lost meaning between cold meals and sleepless nights, his mind replaying the interrogation over and over. Reagan had shouted his innocence until his throat was raw, but no one believed him. Not his job, which placed him on indefinite leave. Not his friends, whose calls grew less frequent. And certainly not the media, who had already painted him as a monster. Murder suspect claims innocence. Former classmate turned killer? The case against Reagan Walker. Every headline felt like a nail in his coffin. The outside world was already convicting him, and he was powerless to stop it. Then, after what felt like an eternity, the door to his holding cell creaked open. His lawyer, Lisa Carter, strode in, her heels clicking against the concrete floor. She was sharp, all business, but today there was something else in her eyes. Something he hadn't seen since this nightmare began. Hope.
We found something,
she said, her voice calm but edged with excitement. Reagan sat up, so fast his head spun.
Please, tell me it's good news.
Lisa smirked.
It's better than good. It's a game changer.
She placed a thick folder on the table between them and flipped it open, revealing a grainy black and white image. Reagan leaned forward, squinting at the photograph. It was a still from a security camera. The timestamp read 10:47 p.m., the night of the murder. And there, walking out of Jeremy Holt's apartment complex, was a man with a hood pulled low over his face. Lisa tapped the image.
That's the real killer.
Reagan's heart pounded so loudly he could barely hear himself speak.
Who is it?
Lisa turned the page, revealing another photograph, this time in full color. The hood was down. The face was visible. And Reagan felt the air rush from his lungs. Kyle Mason. Reagan's old roommate. His former best friend.
His mouth went dry.
Kyle? No. That doesn't make sense. I haven't seen him in years.
Lisa nodded grimly.
That's what we thought too. But it turns out Kyle's been in trouble before, fraud, theft, even an assault charge that got dropped. We started digging deeper, and guess what? He was seen near your old apartment a month ago, breaking in.
Reagan blinked rapidly, his mind struggling to catch up.
Breaking in? Why?
Lisa's expression darkened.
Because he needed something of yours.
She flipped to another page, showing a close-up image of the coffee mug that had condemned Reagan.
This. He stole it from your stuff. Planted it at the crime scene.
Reagan recoiled as if the photograph had burned him. His stomach twisted with a sick realization. Kyle had set him up, had taken something as innocent as an old coffee mug and turned it into a murder weapon.
But why?
Reagan whispered. His hands trembled against the table.
Why would he do this to me?
Lisa exhaled.
That's the part we don't know yet. But what we do know is that you didn't kill Jeremy Holt. And now? We have the proof.
The weight pressing on Reagan's chest cracked, just slightly. He could breathe again, even if the air still felt razor-sharp. He had been framed. His life had nearly been destroyed. But now there was a chance, just a chance, that he could take it all back. But one question still pounded in his skull, louder than ever. Why me? The courtroom hallway smelled of disinfectant and stale air, but to Reagan Walker, it smelled like the first breath of freedom. His name had been cleared. The nightmare was over. Yet, as he stood there, hands clenched into fists, he knew he wouldn't truly be free until he had one final answer. And he was about to get it. Down the hall, the heavy steel doors swung open, and two officers escorted Kyle Mason toward him. His wrists were bound in handcuffs, his once cocky smirk replaced by something unreadable. The Kyle Reagan remembered, the charming, reckless friend from college, was gone. In his place stood a man Reagan barely recognized. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The world around them faded, the murmuring voices of attorneys, the footsteps of officers, the clicking of keyboards at the clerk's desk. None of it mattered. Reagan took a slow, steady breath. Then, with the weight of everything Kyle had done pressing down on him, he asked the question that had tormented him for days.
Why me, Kyle?
His voice was quiet, but the force behind it was undeniable. Kyle tilted his head slightly, like Reagan had just asked him a riddle. Then, to his shock, Kyle chuckled. A soft, almost amused sound, like this was all some inside joke Reagan wasn't in on.
You really don't get it, do you?
Kyle finally said. Reagan's stomach churned.
Get what?
Kyle leaned in slightly, his blue eyes glinting with something dark, something cruel.
You were always the lucky one, Reagan. Perfect job, perfect life. Meanwhile, I was drowning. No money. No future. Nothing. So, I found a way out. And you?
He smirked.
You were the perfect scapegoat.
Reagan's jaw tightened.
You framed me. You almost ruined my life.
His voice shook, his fists trembling at his sides.
And for what? Revenge?
Kyle scoffed.
Oh, please. You weren't even supposed to go down for this. I just needed someone to throw off the cops while I got out of town. I figured you'd be questioned, then released. But then,
He grinned.
you actually got arrested. And I thought, maybe I'll get away with it completely.
Reagan's blood ran cold. This wasn't just a betrayal. This was calculated.
You stole my coffee mug.
Reagan said, his voice barely above a whisper.
You planted it at the scene. How long were you planning this, Kyle?
Kyle just shrugged, his chains rattling.
Long enough.
The officers tugged at his cuffs, signaling it was time to go. Kyle stepped back, his grin never fading.
See you around, Reagan.
He said mockingly, his voice dripping with amusement. Reagan didn't move, didn't breathe. He just watched as Kyle was led away, his laughter echoing down the hall. It should have felt like victory. Kyle was going to prison. Reagan was free. But as he stood there, his body still thrumming with rage, hurt, and exhaustion, he realized something. There would always be people like Kyle. People who would take advantage of others. People who wouldn't care about the damage they left behind. Reagan had been an easy target. He had been naive. Never again. This time, as the words echoed in his mind, they weren't ones of despair. Why me? Because life had thrown him into hell.
And he had survived.